Why do keyboard keys have these tiny little bumps on F and J? You've probably touched them thousands of times, but have you ever actually stopped and asked why they're there? Because if you think they're just two little bumps someone accidentally put on the keyboard, your keyboard has actually been helping you this entire time, and you didn't know. And no, it's not because the keyboard manufacturer wanted to give your fingers somewhere to trip. There is actually a very clever reason. Let's start with something you probably do every single day without thinking about it. Now put your hand on your keyboard. Don't look at them. Well, actually, you're probably looking at them right now because I told you not to. Congratulations, you ruined the experiment. But here is what you are supposed to notice. Your left index finger naturally sits around the F key, and your right index finger sits around the J key. Those two keys are basically your little starting points. And those bumps? They are there so your finger can find those starting points without your eyes having to. Which sounds ridiculously simple at first. But it's actually a pretty smart piece of design if you ask me. You think about what happens when you're typing. You don't want to stare at every single key. Imagine having to look down every time you wanted to type the letter T. Look down. H. Look down. E. Look down. At that point, writing one sentence would take approximately 3 business days. Instead, Touch typists memorize where the keys are. But there is one little problem. I know you didn't see that one coming. How do you know where your hands are supposed to be if you aren't looking? That's where F and J come in. The bumps gives your fingers a physical reference point. You don't need to see them, you can literally feel them, which is amazing. This middle roll is called the home roll. Your fingers are positioned around it when you are touch typing. Your left hand covers A, S, D, and F. Your right hand covers J, K, L, and the semicolon key. And your index fingers are the important landmarks. Left index finger, F. Right index finger, J. So once those two fingers know where they are, the rest of your fingers have a much easier time finding their position. Okay, let's test it. Close your eyes. Or don't. I don't actually know how you're watching this, but just put your hand on the keyboard. Find the little bumps. Now you know where the middle of your hands are. From there, your fingers can spread out to the other keys. Your fingers don't have to search around randomly, they have a reference point. And that tiny bump is basically telling your fingers, you're here and you're here. So your keyboard is basically giving your fingers GPS. Except there is no annoying voice saying, in 200 meters, turn left. Thank goodness. But now you might be wondering, why F and J specifically? Why not D and K? Why not A and L? Why not just put a bump on every key and make the whole keyboard feel like a tiny mountain range? Because that will be terrible. F and J are the natural home position of your two index fingers. They sit right next to the middle letters of the home roll. And because the index fingers are the easiest fingers to use as reference points, making those two positions gives you a reliable way to orient both hands. So once your index fingers are correctly positioned, the other fingers can fall into place around them. So even without looking down, you can know where you are. Here is something interesting. If you've been typing for years, you might not even realize how much your fingers have learned. You can be looking at the screen, thinking about something completely different, and your fingers are down there doing their own little office jobs. Your brain knows the layout, your fingers knows the position. And those bumps give your hands a physical reference when you lose your orientation. So when your hands shift slightly, you can feel the F and J bumps and immediately know, okay, I'm back. Now there is an important distinction. The bumps don't magically make you type faster. They're a reference system. They help you maintain your position. The real speed comes from learning where the keys are and developing muscle memory. So the bump isn't doing the typing for you. Unfortunately, I've checked. Your keyboard still expects you to do the work. And here is another question. If bumps are so helpful, why doesn't every key have one? Now imagine typing on a keyboard where every single key had a giant bump. You would spend more time figuring out which bump you are touching than actually typing. The whole point is to have a small number of reliable landmarks. F and J give you those landmarks without turning the entire keyboard into a tactical obstacle course. And if you've ever used a full computer keyboard, you may have noticed something else. The number 5 on the numeric keypad often has a raised bump too. Same basic idea. It gives your finger a reference point, especially when you are using the keypad without constantly looking down. So your keyboard has been quietly using touch to help you navigate something you are looking at with your eyes, which is actually kind of clever. And this is what I love about tiny design details like this. Something can look completely useless until you understand the problem it was designed to solve. That tiny bump isn't decoration. It isn't there because someone thought, you know what this keyboard needs? A little mountain. No, it's there because human needs a way to orient their hands without constantly looking down. And somebody figured out that a tiny physical marker was enough. So the next time you sit down at a keyboard, run your fingers across F and J. Feel those tiny bumps, because you've probably been using them for years without ever knowing what they were doing. They are basically tiny road signs for your fingers. And now you can't unsee them or unfeel them. I know, you're welcome. If you've just realized there is something else you've been looking at your entire life without ever asking why, stick around because we are going to find out. Next video on another discovery drops soon. See you right there. And thanks for spending time with me. I'm Zeno.